Hello, my name is Greg Andrus. I'm the Vice President of the Democratic Party of Evanston. This is part of our ongoing video series where we interview all of the municipal candidates for this upcoming election cycle. For those of you who have been members for a while, you may remember our endorsement meetings that we held before every election. Typically, we all gather in a big room down at the Unitarian Church, and the candidates get up on stage and talk for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we all cast a vote. Obviously, this can't happen this year, so we're doing it as a series of interviews. We try to get these in around 30 to 45 minutes to give you a chance to hear from each of the candidates. So today I'm joined by Katie Voorhees, who is running for the District 65 School Board. Katie, why don't you take the first few minutes and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Great. So I first and foremost, I am a mother and I have 3 children. I have a 2nd grader who goes to Orrington. I have a kindergartner and I have a 3-year-old. Beyond that, I'm also a mental health clinician. I am a therapist in private practice and I work with children, adults, and families. And I have extensively studied child development and written many articles on, developmental needs of children and treatment of children. I've also worked on IEPs for families, mainly at CPS, you know, pushing them through to approval and getting the families what they need. The other thing is that many of my patients over the years and currently are LGBTQ and people of color, and I have intimately heard all of their stories of struggle, but also triumph. And it really matters to me that their voices are heard. And I just want to say I strongly believe in equity for these marginalized groups. What kind of got me interested in all this, I have noticed clearly how much everyone is struggling from this pandemic in particular, and specifically a lot of distress with the online learning situation, which I feel has been a complete disaster for our kids and our families. So I'm sensitive to these mental health struggles, and I think the board could benefit from having a clinician on the board who can represent our children and our families, and specifically from a clinical perspective. Our children also, they will go back to school, hopefully tomorrow. I know that's not going to happen, but that's what I would want. When they do go back, there's going to be a major transition stage. These kids, they're going to need help processing all of the emotional trauma of the past year. Teachers are going to need help. They're going to need extra support. So I'm thinking a lot about sort of the ongoing emotional needs that need to be met. The other aspect that I bring to my candidacy is trauma-informed care. I specialize in treating trauma and trauma survivors, and I'm very, very attuned to these issues and what they need. I think it's important that we continue to help staff and teachers sort of understand and recognize when a child has been traumatized, because sometimes that behavior will exhibit itself in the classroom as sort of like a disciplinary issue. And I don't want these kids to be labeled as, having bad behavior or they're bad. In fact, if the teacher can recognize that this is the child's attempt at processing their trauma, the teacher is then empowered to have like a more empathic intervention. They'll understand what's going on, and they'll be more supportive. So that's ongoing, I think, something really important. The other thing, our schools are the largest provider of mental health services for children, period. That's sort of the front line. You're going to start seeing a kid acting out first at school. And it's very important to have a very strong mental health supportive environment to address problems right when they arise. Our district for a long time has been promoting social emotional needs and learning, SEAL. I'm a huge fan. I would want to make the program even more robust and really focus on that. And with, there's going to be long-term impacts from this pandemic. So it's even critical, it's more critical now than ever to just be aware of just all of the social emotional needs. And just at the end of this, I deeply care about families and children. That's what I do for my job. It's what really gives me fulfillment. And I'm very invested in D65 for the long haul. I have 3 very young children who are up and coming. And so I really want us all to succeed.
Thank you very much. So our first couple of questions, come as no surprise, are about COVID and the district's response to that. So the first one came to us from one of our members. District 65 has a program in place that provides technological assistance to students who don't have what they need for remote learning at home. Do you believe that the technological assistance provided has been adequate, or what changes would you like to see made to that program, if any?
We need to just be in person. It's just the bottom line. It's not, the remote aspect is just far inferior to what our kids need. I think that remote learning is extremely inequitable. I feel that, there are parents who are working all day. They're not able to focus on their young children who need assistance with the remote learning. And some parents are able to help their kids, others can't. I don't think that's fair. Um, I think that this all has created an equity gap that has now become an equity canyon. And I think we need to get moving in opening up the schools for all of our kids. Um, in March, it seemed to make sense, to close down our schools. This was a new coronavirus. We didn't know the rate of transmission. We didn't know how it would affect people. We thought it would operate similarly to how the flu works. It's highly contagious with kids. But now, and actually we've known for a long time, scientists and doctors have been saying, actually, it's not that transmissible between children. Where people get the virus is at home. They're getting it at home from adults. They're not getting it at school if you maintain social distancing, mask wearing. And surfaces, keep them clean, but they're actually not huge spreaders of the virus. So, I don't, there's no reason why we can't do this safely. I think as a clinician, I can attest to the misery that these kids are in. I've seen so much, anxiety, depression, self-harm, suicidality, all of this from the kids being disconnected from one another. They're in social isolation. They're not behaving normally like they used to because of all of this trauma. Adults are so stressed out and exhausted, and adults are moving more and more towards substance abuse issues. I mean, it has increased exponentially. In my own practice, I I have a little girl. She's so lonely, and out of her frustration, she self-injures. She cuts the inside of her ankles, and she doesn't want to tell her mom. She doesn't want to bother her mom or stress her out, so she tries to deal with her emotion in that way. And I think this is all unnecessary suffering. If we know it's safe to be in the classroom, and we should be providing that social safety net for our kids. They need school. I mean, school's there during the good times and the bad, and especially during the bad, that safety net needs to be there for them.
Well, thank you.
It's pretty clear how I feel on that.
Um, so the district has elected at this point to move to a hybrid format where some parents can choose to send their kids in, some parents can choose to do remote learning. What steps do you believe the board should take to ensure that who are on one learning pathway instead of the other aren't falling behind the ones who are on the other pathway? And what criteria do you think should be used when evaluating the current plan as the school year progresses?
So I think hybrid is a great start. You have to crawl before you can be able to walk. And so hybrid, I would expect, should start right away. And definitely by the fall, we need 100% all kids full day in school. But at the same time, I do think that there should be an option for people who do not feel comfortable. If they don't, they don't agree with the scientists, that's your prerogative. If they don't feel safe, then they should have the option to stay, at home. And I think I do think there should be resources devoted to continuing a remote, but just as an optional type thing. And additionally, um, many of my colleagues and friends are doctors and mental health professionals, and we have been writing letters offering our assistance to the board all summer, since the summer, and those offers were not taken up, unfortunately. The board did form I believe a 65-member task force to help guide their decision making, but there was not a single mental health or physician clinician on that board. Why is that important? Because IDPH has their recommendations. They have all of their fancy charts and numbers, but the layperson cannot interpret this information correctly. It takes an expert to be able to interpret the data and then inform the board and the administration. So it's very crucial to have the right people looking at the information to then guide you to do the right thing. So that's a huge disappointment for me, because I understand that there was like a $25,000 stipend that the board might have paid to some of the people on the task force. I actually know a couple of people who were on it, not doctors, and they weren't paid. So I'm not really sure where that money went. But I would want, and there's the other question of how was the CARES money used, to help the schools get to deal with learning. And from what I understand, there were some unnecessary purchases of like hospital grade gowns that teachers could wear. But like that, you don't need that. That's not a necessary expense. You really just need the mask, social distancing, especially for elementary age kids. 3 feet will do, not even 6 feet. 3 feet is enough if everyone is wearing their mask.
So I just wanted to circle back on that question, because the question was how to make sure that students who are on one pathway aren't falling behind those who are on a different pathway.
I mean, I think that, there are more resources, they should have the people and the software in place, to do both. I think that there would have to be certain teachers who are entirely responsible for the remote, because I think that would be very overwhelming to teachers to do in person and remote. And so I would dedicate a certain amount of teachers who would only be doing remote. But I have a feeling most kids would want to be in person.
Okay, thank you. So moving away from COVID a little bit, several years ago, District 65 passed a funding referendum. It was actually one of the things that was endorsed at our DPS 4 years ago. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on the current state of the District 65 budget and what current and future priorities you'd like to see. What do you see as the biggest financial challenge faced by the district?
Well, right now there's a massive structural deficit. And from what I understand, the board approved a spending spree recently that basically it approved new positions and increases in salary. And I think that's going to get us in trouble, continue to be a source of a problem. I think the board has to be held accountable for what kind of measures they approve as far as, the spending. Um, if things are not in balance, it's a horrible outcome. Teachers will have to be cut, and classrooms will be larger, and it also jeopardizes our efforts at equity. I mean, we have to have the money in order to pursue our equity issues. And the other thing is, as far as the board is concerned, I think it's very important to work as a team. I personally am not the most sophisticated. That my background is not budget. However, I have some friends running for the board who are amazing at budgeting issues. My friends Nadona, Angela, and Donna Sue, they are experts. And so I would very much look forward to working with them on, being a team and get everyone's voice heard and things balanced.
So do you feel that the budget process at District 65 is transparent and accessible both to parents and to the community at large? And what changes would you want to see made to this process, if any?
That's a tough question. I actually read the budget document, and it's dense. It is, many pages, and like, I don't think most people understand it. It's there, you can look it up, but I think people need education on how to, similarly how doctors need to kind of like interpret the data that IDPH is giving out. I think you need someone who's an expert who can then sort of relay the information in words that people can understand, like a spokesperson for the document.
And we did have a question from one of our members who wanted to ask about a specific budget increase of $1.5 million, what was flagged as for program and enrollment needs for increased staffing, when enrollment has actually dropped this year.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, why are we spending more money when those students aren't there? I don't know where that money was spent actually. And that is something that I would want to investigate. And, it's important to always look at our decisions and see if they're working. If they're not working, then let's adjust it. Not a big deal.
This one you had actually brought up a little bit in one of your, or in your opening, but one of our members wanted to ask, as Democrats, we believe in a commitment to racial justice and equity. So what do you plan to do to center students who are a part of historically marginalized communities?
Well, I think that, first of all, just thinking about trauma-informed care is incredibly important. I think a lot of these students are being misunderstood, and I would like teachers to be more empathic and understanding, and students to be more empathic and understanding. I think there needs to be much more communication between all the different tribes. Like, we all need to come together and support each other. I think that we need the money in place to boost and support the students that are struggling. And again, that's rooted in a balanced budget. We have to balance the budget in order for equity to work.
There was a group of activists here in Evanston who are trying to get District 65 to reopen a school in the Fifth Ward. Is that an idea that you support?
I do. I think I
Oh,
think
about, or
I definitely support it. And I think the funding issue, of course, is the problem. And it's probably going to come down to some private funding to make that happen, probably private philanthropy, which we can do. Evanston can do that. And then at that point, the school would need to be handed over to the district for the district to run. And so hopefully we have the money for that. But I definitely, and I also would want to know more from the Fifth Ward if all the people in the Fifth Ward are on the same page regarding the new school. But every kid should have a neighborhood school that they can walk to, and it brings your neighborhood together, and it's very important for group cohesion and a sense of identity. So absolutely, I think they need their own school.
um, the next few questions I have, these are ones that I ask all of the non-incumbent candidates. Of all the ways to get involved, in the public, to serve the public, throw your hat in the ring, why was it District 65, the race that you had picked to run in?
Well, I have these three little kids of mine, 8, 6, and 3. So I have to do my part. I have to step up. My brother, he is a surgeon in New Jersey. And when COVID, took root, and things were really, really bad in New Jersey, and he wasn't doing his elective surgeries that he normally does. He had some time off. And there was a call to action from all the doctors in the area. They said, we need every hand on deck. We need your help. And he stood up and he went into the ER. He volunteered to be the front line with COVID patients. I admire that. He inspires me to stand up and do my part. It's a lot of work, but it's really, really crucial and important. Every child needs an excellent education, and I want that for D65.
So you're running against, there are 3 incumbents who are running for re-election. What is the decision that they've made that you would agree with?
That's a really good question. I I definitely agree with the intent to provide a quality education to all kids in the district. Um, I think that we can look at if that is successful or not. I think that's sort of the issue. Like, I believe in the purpose and the intent. I think we have to maybe look at how it's translating and, what we need to do to really make it more effective, because right now it actually hasn't been effective.
Okay. And as a final question, what would you say your number one priority would be, and what do you believe it would take to make that happen?
Definitely open up our schools. And I think a big thing that needs to happen is a very strong relationship between the board, the administration, and the medical community. The medical community has offered, please listen, and they are taking us up on the offer at this point. And so after that, the next step is, I think the board and the administration need to reach out to families that are in doubt about school reopening. They need to be reassuring and calming about the science that is guiding them. And so I would like for them to really build bridges with the community and really get the message out there that this is safe. And then beyond that, continue to look at these emotional needs that the kids are going to be having. Um, we all need to work together. We've got to get this budget under control, or else everyone's education is going to suffer, especially our kids in the Black and Brown community. They need to have smaller class sizes. They need to have enough teachers, and we need the money put in place for equity efforts. And we need to work together as a team. Everyone has a strength, and I have my clinical expertise. I hope to work with friends on the board who also have their expertise. We need different voices on the board in order for it to be a well-functioning, successful endeavor.
Thank you very much. So we have a few minutes left here, and I like to, if I see we've gathered a small audience to watch. If you're willing to stick around for a few minutes, would you mind taking a question from the floor?
Sure.
Okay. So for everybody watching, I'm going to allow you to unmute yourselves, and I just ask that you only ask one question at a time. Um, so do we have any? I see somebody.
I don't hear anything right now. Sorry. Are you muted?
Sorry,
Okay.
they were curious. So we have a question from chat. They wanted to hear a follow-up on the spending spree. What positions would you like to see, or what did you deem unnecessary in that spending?
I would need to take a closer look at what that money was spent on. From what I understand, it is more positions that may not, especially during a pandemic, may not be completely relevant in this moment, maybe in the future. And then, I think we have to unfortunately look at contracts that have been negotiated, and just kind of look at different raises that people may have gotten.
Okay. I don't know if do we have any other questions? Okay. So thank you so much, Katie, for joining us. Again, this is part of our endorsement process. So anybody who's a member on January 17th, you'll get your ballots sent out to you. They're due back in by January 23rd. If you're not a member yet, you can go to our website, evanstondems.com, and sign up for a member, either as a dues paying member, or if you'd like to get your membership as a volunteer, just reach out to us and we'll find some special elections for you to get involved in, so you can earn your membership that way. Thank you so much, Katie, for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.